This legislature, observing that notwithstanding our former orders made for the education of children, there are many persons unable to read the English tongue, and thereby incapable of reading the holy word of God or the good laws of this state.
The legislature had been concerned about illiteracy because if a child could not read, then he would not know the word of God or the laws of the state. Therefore, if the legislature enacted a law that contradicted the scriptures, and if citizens were illiterate and uneducated about the role of civil government set forth in the scriptures, they might not prevent the passage of that bad law. This was the 1690 illiteracy law. 1690 is also when the first American textbook was published. Up to that point, textbooks had been printed elsewhere and then brought to America. But here is the first American printed textbook, the New England Primer, published in Boston in 1690 by Benjamin Harris. For 2 centuries following its publication, and until the 20th century, the New England Primer became the textbook of American education. For generations, it was a key text from which Americans learned to read. In fact, founding fathers such as Samuel Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Noah Webster even reprinted the Primer for use in their generation. The Primer started students off with phonics, proceeding through the A, B, C's, and showing students how to join letters together and make syllables, and how to join syllables together to make words. Students soon came to an illustrated section called the rhyming alphabet. This alphabet begins with the letter A. It has an illustration of Adam and Eve at a tree, and then has the rhyme, "In Adam's fall we sinned all." The letter B has an illustration of a man holding a Bible in his hand, looking up to heaven with the rhyme, "Heaven to find, the Bible mind." C has an illustration of the star over Bethlehem, several shepherds, and a cross on a hill, accompanied by the rhyme, "Christ crucified, for sinners died." And on it continues throughout the alphabet. Shortly after the rhyming alphabet came the alphabet of lessons for youth. This section was simply a list of the letters of the alphabet with each letter accompanied by a Bible verse. For example, A, "A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother." B, "Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith." C, "Come unto Christ, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and he will give you rest." And on it continued through the rest of the alphabet. At the back of the New England Primer were about 170 questions taught to America's elementary students. Among those questions were several on the 10 Commandments, including,
Which is the fifth commandment? What is required in the fifth commandment? What is forbidden in the fifth commandment? What is the reason annexed to the fifth commandment?
The section also included other questions, such as,
What offices does Christ execute as our Redeemer? How does Christ execute the office of a prophet? How does Christ execute the office of a priest? How does Christ execute the office of a king?
This first grade beginner's book even included this first grade question.
What are the benefits which in this life do accompany or flow from justification, adoption, and sanctification?
Imagine, this little book from 1690 became one of the most famous of all American textbooks, with its Bible lessons influencing American education into the 20th century. By the way, this book is still available today. We've reprinted it, and it's excellent for use by all individuals, whether adults or children. And just in case you need it, just in case you don't have enough college degrees to answer these first grade questions, the book fortunately contains the answers after each question. Let's move forward to 1776, the year America announces independence from Great Britain through the Declaration of Independence. No nation has ever been as long under the same founding document as America has been under the Declaration of Independence. In fact, even though France had her revolution more than a decade after America did, she's now in her 15th government. Brazil has had 7 since 1822. Poland's had 7 since 1921. Afghanistan's had 5 since 1923. Russia's had 4 just since 1918, and this is a story that's similar for all other nations. This type of instability has characterized nations in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Central America, South America, and the rest of the world, except America. So where did our founders find the ideas that made the Declaration the most successful government document in the history of the world? They themselves answer that question. Their ideas came from theological writer and political philosopher John Locke. For example, James Otis, the mentor of both Samuel Adams and John Hancock, declared that
the authority of Mr. Locke has been preferred to all others.
And signers of the Declaration such as John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Rush, and many others also sang the praises of John Locke. And John Quincy Adams confirmed that
the Declaration of Independence was founded upon one and the same theory of government expounded in the writings of Locke.
Clearly, John Locke had a powerful political influence on America and on the Declaration of Independence. So which one of Locke's writings had such a profound and extensive influence on the founders' philosophy and the Declaration of Independence? Well, it was this one, John Locke's two treatises of government. In fact, signer of the Declaration, Richard Henry Lee, declared that the Declaration of Independence was, quote, copied from Locke's treatise on government, end quote. In 1781, Americans won the Battle of Yorktown, the final major battle of the American Revolution, resulting in the complete defeat and surrender of the British military commander, Lord Cornwallis. With that victory, America was no longer just an independent nation in theory only, but now in reality. She was completely free from British policies, including the British policy against printing a Bible in the English language. Therefore, in an event in 1781, which must surely shock those today who believe that American government has always been secular, a plan was proposed and advanced in Congress to print America's first English language Bible. That Bible rolled off the presses in 1782, and of the 20,000 copies originally printed, today just 26 copies remain. This is one of those 26 copies. It's now one of the rarest books in the world. It's called the Bible of the Revolution. Yet, when I say that America's first English language Bible was printed in 1782, that date confuses some. Many think that John Eliot, the famous apostle to the Indians, printed America's first Bible in 1661. Indeed, he did print a Bible in 1661, more than a century before this Bible. But his Bible was printed in the Massachusetts Indian language, not in English. Under the British policy, we could print Bibles in many languages, including not only the Massachusetts Indian language, but also Ojibwa, Cherokee, Shawnee, French, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, Spanish, Russian, and most other languages, just not in English. So this Bible was America's first English language Bible. The records in Congress surrounding this Bible describe it as, quote, a neat edition of the Holy Scriptures for the use of our schools, end quote. On September the 12th, 1782, the full Congress approved this Bible and it soon began rolling off the presses. In fact, printed in the front of this Bible is a congressional endorsement declaring, in part,
resolved that the United States in Congress assembled recommend this edition of the Bible to the inhabitants of the United States.
The American Congress first performed the action of a Bible society 27 years before any Bible society was formed in America. Most Americans today are shocked to learn that the Founding Fathers in Congress were responsible for America's first English language Bible. Within only a few months after that Bible was printed, it became obvious that Great Britain would sign a peace treaty, thus officially ending the American Revolution. Consequently, George Washington, Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, sent his letter of resignation to Congress. However, Washington also needed to notify the state governors of his resignation. Now, recall that America was not yet a full nation with her own independent government. Rather, she had been 13 separate and independent colonies, or states, agreeing to work together in the Continental Congress for their common good against the British. So on June the 8th, 1783, Washington issued a circular letter to the governors of all the states in which he told them of his resignation, and he then offered his prayer for each of them and for the country.
I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you preside in his holy protection, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, without an humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to to be a happy nation.